Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know. Deuce and Mo.
Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know.
Do it for Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. Hey, do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings, it's my favorite show. Do it for Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. Hey, do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings, big hopes and dreams as we cover our kings. Never cover the kingdom, but we loving our kings. And we covered your prayers as we doing our thing. Big Deuce with the par, Lil Mo on the screen. Solo or together, still do it for team. Never switch up for $1 or revenue stream. So we always got each other, balance out the beam. Deuce and Mo, and that's the end of the theme song. Do it for Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. Hey, do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings, that's my favorite show. Yep, do it for Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. Hey, do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings, yeah. What up, Deuce? Hey, Morgan. I'm rooting for y'all.
Let's go,
Kings.
Good morning, welcome in. We are live on a Monday.
Ooh, Deuce with the energy again.
Sometimes you have to manufacture energy that's not even there.
Deuce
to
is
battle.
like dying sick, and no,
That's
you.
not
But
dying,
you know what's so great?
I'm getting over a cold, guys.
You turn it on though. As soon as when the lights go on, you turn it the F on.
I'm glad you mentioned that
Oh,
because
okay.
there's just something when these lights turn on
I just
bright
said
in
that.
my face, the camera's pointed at me, the people, the hundreds of thousands and thousands of Kings fans who come here and listen to me. Oh, give me a hell yeah.
Hi, I'm Deuce and Mo podcast.
Oh, man. We'll let some people filter in. It's going to be a fun podcast today. Of course, the ever-evolving landscape of the Kings coaching search. And right before we get on, we get some Kings news that we'll get to. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we got that. Plus, our buddy Sean Cunningham from Fox 40 in Sacramento joins us to talk about the Kings coaching search. We dive into the NBA playoffs. Oh, God, it's jam-packed.
Fox 40.
I know. Shout out to everyone watching us live. What's up, Will Z, Senor Informo? We got Tyler in the house. If you're in the chat, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe. That would be huge. Shout out to everyone on Twitch, too. Kyron, Joey in the house.
What's up, party people?
See Leezy here, too. Let's get it going, Morgan. We got a lot to talk about, huh?
Yeah, especially before Sean joins us. Let's dive in.
Deuce and Mo coming down in 3, 2, 1. Hit my music.
Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know.
Welcome into the Monday edition of the Deuce and Mo podcast. And how about this? Shout out to a brand new sponsor, the Detailing Pros of Sacramento. What a moment.
What a moment.
We appreciate everyone joining us on a Monday. We've got a lot to dive into on the podcast today. Sean Cunningham going to be joining us in about 25, 30 minutes to talk about the Kings coaching search. That's been whittled down to 3. We also have to talk about the NBA playoffs, a pair of game ones we saw yesterday with the Warriors beating the Grizzlies and the Bucks dominating the Celtics.
Ooh.
I'm Deuce Mason alongside Morgan Reagan. We had a bonus podcast over the weekend talking about the Kings coaching finalists.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, I know. We're dropping bonus content. As you know, we say if there's news, we will be live talking about it. So make sure you're subscribed on all of our channels. Morgan, how the hell are you?
I'm really good on this Monday. I'm on the mend from my sickness. So
That's
I
good.
just feel fresh today. I was like looking at myself in the camera. This hoodie just looks a little different on me today.
Like you're feeling yourself?
Yeah, like I just feel good today where I
Okay.
just haven't felt that way. So it's a good day and you should all feel the same.
Well, Morgan, we have to dive into so many topics. I'm glad you're feeling great.
Thank
I'm glad you're
you.
feeling excited.
Like you didn't even like mention
Yeah.
like, hey, that's really positive. I'm so glad you feel when someone feels good about themselves, you know, you should
Good.
like,
I just have to deal with the roller coaster ride that is Morgan Reagan. You know? You just never know.
fantastic roller coaster ride. Let's go.
We know the Kings have narrowed their finalists for the next head coaching opening, or the head coaching opening, to Steve Clifford, Mark Jackson, and Mike Brown. I know I was really clumsy with how I just said that.
You were.
I
You want to
was.
say that one more time, bud?
The Kings have whittled it down. It's down to 3. Who will Monty McNair give the rose to? Will it be Mike Brown, Steve Clifford, or Mark Jackson?
I don't like putting it into reality television form, but hey, that's kind of where we're at, right?
Yes, we do have a poll question that just got underway. You've had the weekend to think about it. Who do you want as head coach? The options, of course, Mike Brown, Steve Clifford, Mark Jackson. 69%, now 70% of people saying Mike Brown. Coming in second is Mark Jackson, and last, Steve Clifford. Before we start diving into some of the Kings topics, we should note that right as our podcast was about to start, we got a little news story from Shams Charania, who reports that the Kings are losing Joe Dumars. Yes, Kings chief strategy officer Joe Dumars is departing from the organization and is joining the NBA as its executive vice president, head of basketball operations, according to The Athletic. Very interesting timing, right? Because the Kings are in the midst of hiring a head coach, and so many people have wondered the last couple of years, like, what has Joe Dumars' role really been? He had never talked to the media in Sacramento.
No,
We just know he was kind of Vivek's right-hand person,
that's it.
and that he was there to consult with for the front office as someone who was obviously a high-ranking executive, the leader of basketball operations for the Pistons. But besides that, it was kind of unclear as to what kind of role he played. And
Yeah.
also there was some thought of, okay, what kind of role is he playing in this Kings coaching search? But I don't know. Maybe his work is done and he helped with the search and they've narrowed it down. So he's saying, see you later for a new opportunity.
Maybe that's the way it was because, you know, there's always speculation on what he was saying or what he was doing, but nothing truly was ever getting reported. There's always these rumblings, always these rumors. And if you couldn't go along with it, you're probably not going to put it in your piece. So it's, you know, just a Monday for the Sacramento Kings, right?
Yeah, just another change. So Joe Dumars, who has been here a couple of years, is on his way to work for the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, we don't know. I feel like it's been this, hey, Joe's kind of around. He's at a game. He's in a suite. You don't totally understand exactly what his role or the level of influence
Correct.
he had. But we have known that Vivek, over his time in Sacramento, has had people like that. If you want to go back to when he first bought the team, Chris Mullin was that
Correct.
at first. And then that turned into Vlade Divac, which turned into Vlade being the president of basketball operations, general manager, and then it was Joe Dumars.
Yeah. And with Joe Dumars, like, we said, we always heard the speculation or just reports on Joe Dumars being that guy for Vivek. And the amount of influence was never something we had confirmation on, right? So the only people that knew were the people in those rooms. And now Joe Dumars isn't even a part of this. I think the only thing I really take away from this, Deuce, today is going, okay, well, like, out with the old, in with the new kind of concept where maybe it's just like now the people in place have full command of what can happen.
That's a theory. I don't know.
Exactly.
This is just throwing out theories at this point.
Right. And I mean, no, but that's all. But I just said out with the old, in with the new. I mean, that's all I see it as today. But nothing else.
So where do things stand this week? Apparently the Kings will have in-person interviews. And in terms of timing, well, the one person who has kind of an open schedule, I mean, I don't know his personal life, so who knows, but is Steve Clifford. He's not coaching anywhere at this point. So I'm sure he's free to come to Sacramento for an in-person interview anytime this week.
Yeah.
Hell, he could be here today. As far as Mark Jackson, he was in Memphis yesterday for game 1 of Warriors and Grizzlies. ESPN does not have another game until this Friday, so he has a pretty much open week to fly into Sacramento. I assume he'd be here maybe today, tomorrow, or the next day to meet with Sacramento officials. And then the last candidate is Mike Brown, who obviously is still in Memphis. Game 2 of that series is Tuesday, but those two teams after Game 2 do not play again until Saturday for Game 3 in San Francisco. So that obviously leaves some room late this week for Mike Brown to visit Sacramento. If that indeed's, if that happens.
Look at you, Mr. Scheduler.
I'm just trying to map this out a little bit as to what could be the timetable of finding out who the next coach may be.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Mark Jackson comes to town tomorrow and blows them away and they go, hey, you know what? Mike thinks we're moving forward with Mark. I don't know.
You never know what's going to happen. I just thought the most interesting thing from yesterday was like, oh, there's two guys right there that are possibly the Sacramento Kings future head coaches right there at the same game. Different roles.
You think they talked about it?
Well, you have to at that point, right? Isn't it? I mean, I guess if you're Mike Brown, you want to stay focused and everything, but also, things can get loose before a game and the conversation can flow maybe with Mark Jackson on the sideline. I don't know. And if that was happening, I sure as hell hope someone got a photo.
You've had a couple of days to digest all this news. The 3 finalists. We went on right after the news came out. Where are you at today? How are you feeling about everything?
I feel pretty much when I was saying on that day that we found out the finalists, I said how open I was to everything. I think I was telling myself I was open to everything, where now I'm like truly open to, like, I feel it. I'm open to everything as I spit.
I think how I look at things right now, and don't spit on me, you disgusting. Get your shit together.
Sorry.
I don't have to talk myself into Mike Brown.
Oh, but you saw I was there already.
I know. You made it clear.
Yeah.
You said like last week. I don't have to talk myself into Mike Brown.
Good.
I really have to talk myself into Mark Jackson.
That's fine.
We've gotten a lot of feedback from the podcast we did the other day about all the candidates and really kind of focusing on Mark Jackson. And I think it's important that no matter how you feel one way or another about a person is like, don't just brush aside certain things because it fits your narrative, right? Like,
yep.
The fact that Steph Curry and Draymond and Andre Iguodala had been pretty vocal about Mark Jackson and all of his players like him.
Yeah.
Most of his players, I'm not gonna say every player likes him, but they've been very vocal about it in situations where it's not like they're being asked about it by the media. It's literally Draymond, Steph talking about it. I do think that stuff really matters. You can't just brush it aside. There is something there. It doesn't mean I don't have legitimate concerns, but you have to be fair.
And something else I mentioned to you when we were talking about this, about all these players obviously vocalizing how much they like Mark Jackson as a coach, and we were talking about why that matters. They can talk about how much they like him as a coach. It still doesn't mean that he's a great coach or anything. We're not even saying that. We're just saying that where this league has gone and it being such a relationship-based league, that aspect of coaching is absolutely important. It's something that can factor in to coaching, to success. Again, not acting like that is the end all be all to, okay, well, everyone likes him, so he must be a great coach. No, everyone likes him. That is that. Or former players like him. That is that. And yeah, this whole thing with Mark Jackson, I thought about it too. I had to talk myself into Luke Walton. Like, it's a lot of times I think people think these situations in who they like, it's black or white. It doesn't have to be. There can be an unknown. There can be a gray area, because when you look at all these coaches, sometimes people just go to the past and what they did on their coaching resume. It's not apples for apples everywhere you go. And just because they're a bad coach somewhere, or they have off the floor problems or whatever it may be, and maybe not, it doesn't mean that's going to be the same in a different place. And I'm not saying that to sway you or anyone else in one way. I'm just saying that, like, hello, you got to kind of humanize the situation a little bit.
Let's get to some of the comments. We'll make some of these in.
Okay.
We do have to talk NBA playoffs at some point, but you know what? This is a show. It changes. It's going to evolve based on the conversation.
Yeah, live convo.
One person says the only upside about hiring Mark Jackson is that we can say we made it work with him, and he was the one to turn around the franchise against all odds from both ends. Yeah, I mean, it seems like unlikely that this franchise that has been a mess for 16 years is going to get turned around by a guy who hasn't coached since 2014 in any capacity. And he comes with, we've detailed all this, like the divisiveness, all these topics that have come up when talking about Mark Jackson. It seems unlikely. But the Warriors culture before Mark Jackson, to be fair, took over was a mess too. And he helped establish the culture there. He established a defensive identity. He established an identity, which I think is very important. And that's not me saying that. That's like former players. That's Steph Curry saying he helped establish an identity. The other stuff, like the alleged homophobic remark that he made.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to have to address that if he ever becomes a head coach again. He's going to have to answer questions about his relationship with front offices, right? He's going to have to address why things went wrong with his previous assistants. He's going to have to address how he's evolved over time. There are so many questions, right?
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And that's why it makes the Mark Jackson candidacy a very controversial one for so many. I do think there is more people. You have Twitter, which in my feed there's a lot of people who are anti Mark Jackson, but then there's a lot of people in our YouTube comments who are like, look, here's why it does make some sense, and here's the point you guys are missing or whatever. Tyler says, sure, let's bring in more dysfunction to the most dysfunctional organization in the league.
And my question to that too, Deuce, is I go, because I felt that same way, Tyler, a week ago. And then this, entire last week, Deuce and I both have been diving into so many different interviews, articles, all these different angles and perspectives on Mike Brown and Mark Jackson mostly. Poor Steve Clifford, he just tends to get pushed aside. But on those two specifically. And when you look at a lot of the things with Mark Jackson and we talk about the dysfunction and everything that was there and the divisiveness that we did see and was reported on, I just go, that was so long ago that I do believe people change, coaching strategies evolve, humans evolve. And I'm not acting like, I'm not sticking up for him and saying that that's what he did. But at the same time, he has been on the NBA broadcast all these years. So there's people that obviously like him and like working with him within a broadcast, at least, if you want to look at it that way too. We just go straight to all the negative. And I do believe that we also have to look at the things that he is still doing too.
Yeah, and you're right. He could evolve. I think one counter has been one. He doesn't have a lot of experience either, right? It was only 3 seasons. He didn't have coaching experience before that job.
Right.
It's only 3 seasons. So one area that he was criticized a bit by Joe Lacob after being let go was, Joe was like, dude, I'm opening up my wallet. Go hire the best assistants you can. And, he had issues with his assistants. So I think it's imperative that if Mark Jackson were to get another opportunity in the NBA, whether it's the Kings, Lakers, wherever, he's got to have a very experienced staff with him.
Yeah.
And he's got to show he can work with people. And it is playing a game. Like, I think Mark sometimes, based on some of the stuff I've read, the interviews I've listened to, I went back on YouTube and listened to multiple interviews he did with Dan Patrick.
You sent them all to me.
Did a deep dive. I don't go as deep as Jill Adge, who can tell you how much property tax that Mark Jackson paid in 2012.
Amazing job, Jill.
Like, she goes deep, does a great job pulling out articles. It's awesome. But, like, I think he sometimes struggled with the fact that being a coach in the NBA, a head coach, is more than just coaching inside the locker room. As great as that seems, like you're just with those guys, I'm just here to coach basketball, you have to be able to work with people in the front office and work and talk to your
Deuce.
owners and have a relationship.
Who else was like that within the Kings organization? Dave Yeager. Remember we talked?
Well, I mean, Malone had a little bit of that too.
And Malone had that as well. But I remember with Dave Yeager, that was, part of the thing. It's like, he doesn't want to be smiling with everyone. He was a nice guy and everything, but he's like, I want to be on the floor, X's and O's. I don't want to invite my players to an extra dinner with me. I don't want to favor anyone. Like, that was just his way of coaching. And I feel like as the league evolves, you kind of want to adjust and evolve with it. Unless you're such an established coach like Greg Popovich or even Eric Spoelstra, where you have a way that you don't even need to change because you've won so many championships, you've done so much winning.
But even he has changed.
And yes, and both those coaches I just mentioned, why they have changed, because all it did was better them as humans, as coaches, as organizations. So it's definitely something that I would hope to see if Mark Jackson was the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Like, I mean, these are all things that we talk about. I just think sometimes we're not giving a guy like Mark Jackson enough of a, like, hey, people change kind of scenario.
I think here's the problem is we don't know. It's all
And
like,
we
hey,
don't
maybe
know.
he's changed. Like, maybe. And that's like great wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But we also talked to Sam Amick, who said like Mark Jackson's the type that said, mama, there goes that man in the mirror. Like, here's what I know about Mike Brown.
Yeah.
Based on all the stuff I've gone
love.
into, is there has been significant change in him.
Yes.
And his impact on the Golden State Warriors since coming over in 2016 has been felt like drastically. And I know we're going to talk more with Sean Cunningham in like 10 minutes about all these candidates and get his thoughts too and continue this conversation. But for me, diving into some of the stuff on Mike Brown, he got hired at a young age to be the Cavs coach, had great success, multiple 60-win-plus seasons, and yes, he did have LeBron James.
Yep.
But breaking news, you do need talent in this league to win. That's obviously important. Then he had the Lakers gig where the first year wasn't too bad. Then the next year was the weird, like Nash. You had Nash, Dwight Howard, he had to deal with a lot during his Lakers tenure. It was a weird time. He got bounced out, and then he went back to Cleveland, which is crazy. Dan Gilbert brought him back. Gilbert said this was the biggest mistake he had ever made, was letting Mike Brown go. So he gets hired by the Cavs again, goes back, signs a 5-year deal with the team. Midway through the year, they fire their GM, and David Griffin gets elevated. He and Mike Brown did not see eye to eye, and after 1 year, he was out. So Mike Brown is out.
After signing a 5-year contract.
He is just, his 2 kids are out at school.
Yep.
He and his wife divorced.
Yep.
He's going through a weird time in life. It's getting crazy for him. It's like, holy shit, this is talk about transition. I went from coaching basketball, being married with kids in the house, to kids are out of the house at school.
To midlife crisis.
What is going to happen? And maybe he had kind of a midlife crisis because all of a sudden he's got a motorcycle and he's riding around.
And he's helping out with the high school football field.
He's taken a sabbatical from basketball a bit. So he steps away. He spends a lot of time watching his son play college ball the next year. Greg Popovich then calls him, and he knows Pop from his days as an assistant in San Antonio. He spent a lot of time there. And Pop invited him, saying, if you want to come and spend time with us, any practice, any game, pregame, halftime, you have full access. Come on in.
I love
You
Greg
deserve to be
Popovich.
in. Like, come on
Yeah.
in. So it was great because he was not ready to dive back in.
Yeah.
But for Mike Brown, it allowed him to kind of dip his toes back in the water, be around those guys again, get that feeling. And he spent like 47 to 50 games with the Spurs that year. Practices, all of that stuff, learning and getting experience, and also had the flexibility to go watch his son play college game. He went to like most of his kids' games. He went to 30,
all of them but one.
31 of 32. The one he didn't go to was a game against UNLV because the UNLV coach got fired and they had tied Mike Brown to the job. So he's like, I'm not going to show up to that game. Anyway, so he goes through that, and then Walton leaves to go coach the Lakers. So Kerr's looking for another guy. He calls Popovich to talk about Mike Brown. Popovich calls Mike Brown and says, if he offers you a job, you need to take it. He takes that job. And he says that this has been the best job he's ever had in basketball, working for Steve Kerr. And the one thing that jumps out to me in reading about him is how much he has evolved his thinking. He's been a guy that you've loved this about him.
Love.
Super organized.
By the book.
Oh my God.
Boom, boom, boom. Color coordinated, organized.
Yes. Defensive minded, all this stuff. But he has said over time, he has learned to kind of ease back a little bit because he's been around Steve Kerr. He's been around great players, and he's got a greater understanding of how he's had to evolve as a coach. The game has changed since he last coached in the league since 2014. But let's not lose sight. He also coached the Warriors to start the playoffs in the 2017 playoffs. They went 12-0 during that stretch. Obviously a really good team too, but he still got his feet wet there. My whole point is this guy's been through a lot.
Yeah.
He's gotten opportunities. He's had success. He's had some moments that haven't been great. And he seems like he is ready for this next opportunity at 52 years old. And he's armed with so much intel and experience that it makes a lot of sense.
I think so many people look at his 35-year-old head coaching job and what he did with the Lakers and wherever else, and people just judge. And you really don't understand that a coach in one place might do something, be a different coach than they are in a different place. And Deuce, you sent me this Tom Ziller article, and one of my favorite things that he put in there, what looks like a bad coach in one situation can look much different in a different situation. The Bucks didn't need what the Mavericks needed, and so on. And what he's saying was, with Jason Kidd, for example, didn't even look like he should have been a coach in the NBA at times, right? And then you're seeing what he's been doing with the Mavs, and whether that's on him plus his coaching staff, things are turned around. His reputation is different.
At least for now.
For now. And even with Bud, with the Bucks, like, remember when we were like, okay, he's going to be out if he doesn't win a championship this year. He ends up winning a championship with Giannis, and now he's still the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. You know, there's just different, and then obviously throughout his other years, Hawks, everything else, there's just so many different situations that can make you look one way and have a certain reputation, and then the perfect situation is going to come along, organization, whatever it may be, and everything can change.
I love that you say that example as a perfect situation. It's hard to imagine the Kings being the perfect situation.
It's not, and it's not for anyone. That's the thing. Like, really, where my mind goes to is that no matter what, there's going to be chaos. And sadly enough, I want Mike Brown to be the head coach, the next head coach of the Sacramento Kings more than anything in the world, which makes me believe it's going to be Mark Jackson. Because that's always how my life goes with this kind of situation. And if that's the case, I'm ready to dive in and be open to what he can accomplish with this team. But at the end of the day, too, Deuce, it all starts at the top. Because what's happening at the top? A coach can only do so much within an organization. You want to change the identity, you want to change the culture. Well, it starts up here, too. Right?
Well,
so you got to make sure everyone's in line.
I think the biggest obstacle, too, in this whole thing is, does Mike Brown, who has not coached since 2014,
head coach,
who's as a head coach, his last thing was getting fired after year one in a 5-year deal from Cleveland in his second stint, is he ready to jump back in with the challenge of all challenges?
Yes.
This isn't diving back in with a great team.
I wouldn't do it.
This isn't going to the Lakers gig with LeBron again and knowing some. This is diving into a situation that has been chaotic, no winning, dysfunctional for years. does he have what it takes to take on that challenge and be the guy that can help turn it around? He can't do it alone, as you mentioned. It's got to be everybody. But does he want that opportunity? A couple other nuggets that jumped out to me about him, too, that I was reading over the weekend. Kerr credits Mike Brown with helping him become more organized and detail-oriented. Seldom does Brown let Kerr overlook a rotational nuance or facet of the scouting report. The other thing is he has been responsible for the Warriors' defense big time. When he first got hired, he's kind of focused on the offense. Ron Adams, a longtime NBA assistant, was focused on defense. This year, the Warriors changed some things up defensively. Steve Kerr said having him oversee the defense was an easy choice for me. Mike has always been very passionate about defense. He's always been very knowledgeable. To say he's done a great job would be an understatement. He's been terrific. According to this article, Brown overhauled how the Warriors handled pick and rolls, dribble handoffs, and closeouts. Instead of switching on almost everything and forcing the ball to the middle of the floor, they now stay toward the high side to keep the action near the sideline or baseline. The approach is rooted in Brown's belief that spacing the court better positions defenders to help one another. Klay Thompson wanted to say Mike is very, very prideful of defense. He's like a secondary head coach. Coaches throughout the time in the 2017 playoffs, coached the Cavs to the finals. He's been around some of the greatest to ever play the game.
True that.
So those are things that just jump out to me
Yeah.
about Mike Brown. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking at all the candidates, we don't even mention Steve Clifford. I like Steve Clifford a lot. My prediction right now, this is just me, my opinion. I think the Kings have it Brown,
Okay.
Jackson, Clifford.
That's where I would say they have it too. And I feel like everyone on Twitter, as soon as Mike Brown is not the head coach, oh dear God, knock on wood. People, especially on Twitter, are going to be like, what did the Kings do wrong? Why wouldn't they hire him? And really you have to think about, did Mike Brown turn it down? Like you have to factor in that is a possibility. Did Mike Brown turn it down? Because it wasn't the best situation for him and where he's evolved his coaching career now. Now, with Mark Jackson, and if that comes up next, I think there's going to be so many people that just want to jump to the hate. But at the same time, why not ask questions first? Why not get answers about what he has said in the past, right? Why not get answers about what he believes in now as a culture or off the court issues or whatever it may be? Like, you got to give that second chance opportunity at times.
If Stephen, Clay, and Draymond and Andre and all these former guys had nothing good to say about him, then the conversation's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Wait, his players didn't really like him. He had 3 years. Okay. And then he hasn't coached since then. He hasn't taken an assistant job. Like, if all those things remain true and all the other stuff that comes with it, then it's an easy conversation. But this is a little different to me, right? Because you can't, if you ignore what players say about someone, it's misguided. I think you are trying to, you are so steadfast into your beliefs, which is fine, but you're ignoring something that should matter. That's how I look at it. Go ahead, Morgan.
Just some people in the chat. We can get the most defensive-minded coach, but it has to run out of guys like Fox, Sabonis, and we're still going to have a bad defense. Well, and that's the thing. When you have a good coach, whether defensive-minded or not even, but you have a good coach that understands how to get the most out of that guy, then even with Fox and Sabonis, that's how you manage them, right? You get that out of them. Sure. They have to do it within themselves too, but Morgan, a good coach can get that.
And this is where Mike Brown comes into play here a little bit, because no one watching the game, no one in this chat right here, right now, is going to suggest that Steph Curry is some lockdown defensive player. But he has gotten better. And because of the buy-in from everybody on that Warriors roster, and they have some nice defensive players, obviously Draymond, okay, Clay, maybe not as good as he used to be post-injury. Yeah. GP2, we know how good he is defensively. But it's not like they're chock full of all defensive guys, but they had a good defensive team. And Steph Curry has done much better defensively this year. Hell, what was one of the biggest moments in the game yesterday? It's 117, 116. John Morant's got the ball. He gets a switch with Curry on him. He goes right to Curry's chest. And what'd Curry do? He stayed strong, stripped the guy, and it was a big play in the game.
It was a huge defensive play.
Clay missed both free throws after that. But that was one of the biggest defensive plays in yesterday's game came from Steph Curry.
Yeah. And even with that was just him being a smart defender, right? And understanding, okay, don't foul, one, but two, just eye on the ball, stay with the ball, shadow the ball. And you can teach those things with so many players that have a high IQ and that are willing to learn and that are willing to be coached. And I think now more than ever, De'Aaron going into his sixth season, seems like he's more willing than ever to accept discipline and standards and all these things that a coach may bring. Whoever that coach may be. One of these three. What a weird time.
Why do you think Steve Clifford is not getting the same? Is it because he coached Charlotte and Orlando and he hasn't? It's not like he's had some deep runs.
I just don't. I don't think there's anything that wows me with Steve Clifford, and that when I look at the three, right? But when I look at the three, I feel like the Mark Jackson name is being mostly pushed out there, which is, I feel like that traction, like there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
With the Mike Brown situation, it's like that is the best, I feel like, situation of the three. You look at me being an ageist, you look at age, you look at, what he's been doing in his most recent years. You read about him and just as a human being, what type of person he is and how he understands evolving. Like he almost seems like too good of a person to be with the Sacramento Kings. Like I'm a little scared for Mike Brown if he does get this job. But that's why when it comes to Steve Clifford, there's just nothing like super sexy about it. But it's like, yeah, I mean, I'll buy in. Let's see what you can do, Steve.
We've got more coming up, including Sean Cunningham from Fox 40 dropping by. We should mention that today's podcast is presented by a brand new sponsor. Give me a hell yeah, Deuce. Okay. Yeah. How do you find the hell yeah? All right. Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
The detailing pros of Sacramento, Morgan Reagan.
I'm so excited. Welcome to the Deuce and Mo family, the detail pros of Sacramento. We're excited to have them on board, but it's an exciting time too, because not only Nick, the owner, is he local and he's all about making auto care easier than ever. You can just go online, pick your package, select your technician, select a date and a time according to the detailer scheduled, and just get it booked. It's that easy. There's 3 options on the website. You pick one. It's like In and Out. Just make your order.
And he's a Kings fan too.
Hell yeah.
Gets down with the Deuce and Mo podcast. Yeah, there are 2 best times to have your vehicle detailed, by the way. Right before summer, coming up, right before winter. They don't make cars like they used to, Morgan.
They don't.
So it's more vital than ever to have your investment protected and looking good for years to come. Go to their website, thedetailingprossac.com. Select Deuce and Mo podcast and How Did You Hear About Us box to get a free paint sealant upgrade. That's a $125 value, Morgan, for a standard size sedan and can provide protection for up to the year.
And I'm telling you, talking to Nick so much about car detailing and the importance of car detailing and cleaning your car, even if it's on a yearly basis. He has so many clients that do it monthly. Some do it weekly. Others do it bi-monthly. It's just whatever fits you and your financial needs. And that's why there's so many different packages for you to choose from. Whatever works for you. I'm so excited because I know you and I are each going to get our cars detailed in the next 2 weeks by Nick or by whoever else is in the area, because this is the other great thing about him, Deuce. Not only are there options for Nick if you're in the downtown area to pick up your car, drive it back to you when it's done, or you can drop it off at a facility, or there's also mobile detailers. Whatever fits best for you, they figure it out for you, for your needs. They're just amazing.
Yeah, head over to the detailingprossac.com. Welcome to the Deuce and Mo podcast family. And if you have interest in, doing advertising with Deuce and Mo, hit us up. Go to deuceandmo.com. Looks like our buddy is here. He's got a new job. He's feeling good about life. Let's welcome him in. He is the one and only Sean Cunningham. We have to fix the screen though. It's all messed up at the moment.
Well, let us get you going. Sean, is this your new office or where is this?
It's home. Come on.
Oh.
Morgan.
No, this is my home.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, okay. I was like, I feel like I've seen this before. I was like, oh,
Hey, man, I got all
Sean.
my music stuff back here, and there's some good stuff back there, man.
I know, you're so cool.
You're so hip, Sean.
You know what my
Oh.
favorite piece is? It's like
What?
this thing on the wall over here. This was my pandemic scrapbooking thing where I literally got the idea and the boredom to take ticket stubs from all these concerts that I've been
Yes.
to. And one that I didn't go to, I had a family member who actually saw Eddie Murphy perform at, I think it was Cal Expo. And so I've always kept
Wow.
the ticket stub because I just was, the memorabilia part of it was so cool. And so, yeah, I scrapbooked it all together like
Sean.
a senior citizen or something. I don't
No,
know.
hey, you stop that. I started scrapbooking a little bit when the pandemic started with all like my basketball clippings because my grandpa used to cut out all my newspaper clippings and I just never had them anywhere. So then it felt very like narcissistic to be putting stuff about myself into a scrapbook and making a scrapbook about
It's
myself.
memories, dude.
Yeah, but it was memories.
Secret time. I used to with my grandma used to be into this thing called Creative Memories. Friday nights, you go with all these old ladies and they'd scrapbook and crop pictures and put them in with stickers and all that. I used to go there when I was 8, 9. I would scrapbook with all these old ladies.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Yeah.
all the way till he's 25.
See, I mean, it's great. And their memories, you're right. And you know, what's funny. I actually was fortunate enough to go to Billie Eilish recently at Golden One Center, and I had to beg, borrow, and plead. And fortunately, I had someone come through for me, but I ended up with a little ticket stub because you can't get those.
You can't get them.
anywhere.
It's all on the phone.
It's ticketless. So
Ugh.
they took care of me.
Well, Sean, congratulations on the new gig, by the way.
Yeah.
After a long run over at ABC 10, you've been a
Yeah, man.
fixture in Sacramento sports forever, going back to 1140 days. I've known Sean since I was like 16 years old, and here he is now with a new opportunity over at Fox 40. Dude,
Yeah, how about
congrats,
that?
man. How's that feel? Weird?
It's like it's weird. Like it's super weird because I mean, I don't like, I mean, you know me, man. I'm like so self-deprecating and, you know, ha ha ha, you know, you're stupid or, you know, whatever. Like, I don't, it's just overwhelming. It really is because I've had opportunity to leave before and didn't think it was quite the right opportunity and had people come after me before. And inevitably there's always something that'll hang it up. And usually it'll kind of get down to compensation or whatever. And for people who don't know, like, I wasn't under contract, so it wasn't like I had to be there. Like I could have left at any point over my nearly 12 years at Channel 10, which I'm old AF, man. That is wild. I didn't even know it was like once you think of it like 12 years, like Deuce knows, like I was associated with KHDK for over a decade. And then, I get let go there. And I always famously say, like, I would have fired me just because like I didn't have a role there.
Yeah.
So I can't even have like hard feelings about it. Like I never do.
In all
I mean,
fairness, they fire a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
I
it
mean,
turns out
In all
okay.
fairness.
No, and people who don't know, like when you're working in radio, even when producing for Coase and Grant and Dave and Rise guys at one point, like, I always had a retail job just in case because
Wow.
the business was so volatile. So the first thing that happened when I got to 10 was I'm looking around. First of all, I looked at everyone's car and I'm like, okay, like this isn't so bad. And I'm like, and then I'm looking at the wall of like they had these things of like anniversary, like your work birthday, and I'm looking up there and I'm like, wow, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years. There's somebody who's been there for 40 years. Like they just, they don't fire. I mean, they do fire people. They fire people, but they don't like you. You could make a long career there. And
That's so cool.
when I was there, I was like, who knows how long I'll be here. And then it was a decade all of a sudden. And then it was like, oh my God, here I'm going to 12 years. And literally it just happened so quickly, and I think it had a lot to do with, Jim Crandall retiring from Fox. And then Chris Tavares got there. He's the new sports director. I know Mark Dembski had stepped away at one point, and Dembski is responsible for me even becoming a Kings reporter because when I was at KHDK, when he jumped to Fox 40 all those years ago, that opened the door for Mike Ramey to go, why don't you go ahead and do this? And so
It's wild how it works out.
yeah, and you know, they poached me. I first met him. I was at the NFC Championship in LA for the Rams and 49er game, and that was the first time I met him. And then I think he saw what I did just over the course. And they, you know, him and Lindsay Polaris, who's fantastic. She comes over from Green Bay. She's kind of brand new to the area as well. So they wanted somebody old AF like me who kind of knows the landscape of things and to navigate. And it got, at first I was like, yeah, man, I'll talk to you guys, you know, we can talk about it, but you know, I'm pretty happy over at 10. And then they made it to where all of a sudden things were, they made it really hard. No, I don't know about that. Although that could be my 215,000 miles in my rig. So I might have to step it up a little bit.
Well,
but yeah,
dude, that's awesome. I'm happy for you.
Very happy for you.
Let's talk about something that you're used to covering in your time in Sacramento. That's another coaching change.
Yeah.
It's down to 3. You got Clifford, Brown, Jackson.
Are we sure, by the way? Like,
whoa,
What? Breaking news!
Do we got breaking news? Sean is confirming that there's more. What do we have?
Definitely not worthy of that stinger. No, I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say finalists. I've also heard a lot of people just say they've advanced to the next round of interviews. And I said this on just last week, you know, where I don't mean to sound disrespectful, and this probably is, but like and I'm not trying to sound like I'm making fun of the organization, but they come out and they say it's going to be a process-driven coaching search. Okay, there's no rush in trying to get your head coach between now and June. I mean, you got so much time before the draft. You've got a pretty good foundation in place with this front office, I feel. You know, so you know the coach you'd want to probably be a part of that, but things change so quickly in the NBA, and you still have teams that are competing in the playoffs, and you can still talk to their people as they have famously. But you know, is Quinn Snyder going to keep his job? Is James Brick?
He's not going to come to Sacramento. But here's my only question to you when you said, like, can't you be more patient? Because I was on that same boat, but then at the same time I go, now isn't there competition with like the Lakers? And if something does open with the Jazz, and then you got
the Hornets.
Yeah, like, isn't that a little?
Sure, if you find the guy you want, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
that's the 100%. Like, but again, my job is to sit here and poke holes. Like you know, I will ask questions, I'll poke holes, and look, and the reality is the people I might mention, like David Vanderpool, Sam Cassell, you know, Terry Stotts, like either they may not have interest in you or you may not have interest in them already. So that is very possible. So that could be part of it. But when I saw the list, I kind of expected a little bit more. So I said, meh, just because there wasn't, you know, there was certainly people that I'd be comfortable if an organization, if the Kings decided to hire some of those people, I would have been like, yeah, okay, great. But I also think that there's other candidates that I would have considered. Not to say they didn't. You know, I'm just, when you get down to those 3, so much has a way of happening. And I just kind of harken back to the Dave Yeager day when they interviewed so many people. And the minute Dave Yeager became available, he was in town the next day.
That's a great point. It just came out of nowhere. There was all these other names. Mike Woodson, right? Mike Woodson was one of those.
Benny Del Negro.
Yeah.
You had a lot of, and again, you know, I know people hate
Ime
that
Udoka.
word. Yeah. And I know people hate that word retread, right? But
yeah,
I don't. I think that
right.
Wait, so anyone that coaches one time is a retread. Okay.
People just hate the term, and it's like, then don't use it.
Right. I mean, and I said last week we did this thing where it was, and I think James stole the idea from you guys, which was if you have to,
Whoa, what do you say? What do you say?
No, it's like, you know, okay, who do you like and who do you think they would get? Like, who would you hire? And of the 7, and who do you think they would hire? And my guess for who I thought they would hire, I thought they would give Charles Lee a little bit more consideration, or, you know, maybe, who knows, maybe he pulled himself out. Does it, you know, I don't think anyone likes to know how the sausage gets made. At the end of the day, you find your coach. But I thought the one that they would hire would be Mike Brown. So I'm still kind of in on it. Or excuse me, the one I said I think I would hire would be Mike Brown.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Now, do I think they will? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I with the Warriors right now in the playoffs, my Align and me kind of being in this transition, because today's actually my first day at Channel 40.
Ah,
I
yay!
no, it's gotten in the way a little bit, so we'll see. And if these are finalists, that's great, but I think it's also quite possible, and I wouldn't be totally surprised. So I throw it out there as if fans, if all of a sudden a Phil Handy or David Vanderpool or Sam Cassell, so somebody just comes out of nowhere, James Borrego, who just got let go in Charlotte, if all of a sudden there's like we're going to interview them too, I wouldn't have the knee-jerk reaction of whoa, I didn't see that coming, because these are final, you know what I mean? So it's like, again, this is the next round of interviews. They're supposed to be in person. You could call them a finalist, that's fine, and I made sure to kind of make a distinguish in my report for it. But in all likelihood, you probably have your next head coach in these three.
Do you think the departure of Joe Dumars, which we saw today, Shams had reported, do you think that's going to change anything, or do you think we're looking too much into that? Because you're talking about now, like, I don't know if these are actually the finalists, and then you have Joe Dumars depart as of hours ago, and now I'm feeling like maybe there's a way that there could be more. Do you think that's going to change anything?
Well, it definitely changes the voices in the room because he was so influential. I think I don't think that it's something that the Kings didn't know before last week. I mean, I think they knew that Joe Dumars would probably be leaving. I don't think it's catching anybody off guard this morning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Other than maybe the fan base, but again, this is like your Chris Mullin, right? When Vivek took over and this was the advisor role, they have a different churched up name for it. And I would say his biggest strategy was declining media requests for interviews, because as much as he is a legend, and but again, for somebody to have that type of role, it was just always odd, especially if you're a Hall of Famer within the organization. To not talk to the media is a bold strategy. And that's no slight on the Kings. It's not like the Kings kept him in a dungeon and said, you will not talk to the media. He was very present. I mean, you guys would see him at games, you would see him at practices. He'd be talking to a lot of people within the organization. He'd have his son around, and he's a gentleman. I mean, the guy's great. So I was always hoping to someday be able to talk to him. And I thought, well, maybe things will just get a little bit better. Maybe they just have to get some sort of upward momentum before he decides he wants to do that. And the tragedy is he never did. So good for him. He's off to a pretty great role though within the NBA. So that's a good thing for him.
We should go candidate by candidate a little bit now that we're down to maybe three. Sean, I don't know, Sean. Maybe there's a secret guy that's coming out of nowhere.
Maybe I have the appetite for more. How about that?
I think some people have that same appetite. Mark Jackson is a name that obviously comes with a lot of controversy. I think you have, some of the fan base that's like, no way, this is awful, can't happen. You have some, they're like, hey man, like, he did a good job in his 3 years with the Warriors. Players really dug him. There's just a lot that comes with Mark Jackson. And I think we've all chronicled it on other podcasts, but where are you at with him as a candidate and kind of the conversation that's being had about him?
Yeah, I do think Mark Jackson should have a shot at being a head coach again. If someone wants to hire him and look beyond some of the ugliness that's been around there, I think time has passed, and I think people grow. And I think, look, that was his first time being a head coach, and he's coming from being a player where he was practically a head coach on the floor. And certainly things didn't go well. Some things did. But I also feel like I think the confidence that the league has in Mark Jackson, putting him on the flagship broadcast of all of their games, if it was something that was truly a concern, he wouldn't be there. And so I think people have done their due diligence. I think he's eloquated him. I think he's been able to be eloquent in the way he describes certain things. And I think I would like to see a little bit, maybe some more accountability on his end, but at the same time, behind closed doors, I think he acknowledges some of the shortcomings. And I think that it's much akin to John Gruden, and I don't mean the controversy stuff. I think it's a guy who, had this very, very public head coaching persona, goes into broadcasting, and when you're on the flagship station and on the flagship of the league for games, it's hard to leave that. I mean, Jeff Van Gundy hasn't left it either. And he's obviously a little longer in the tooth, but Jeff Van Gundy has interviewed for head coaching gigs too. I think something has to be almost a really perfect situation for him to leave. Now, if I'm the Sacramento Kings, with saying all that, I just think that they're in a place and their time in the organization where I could see Mark Jackson helping them. I just don't think it's the right move per se. I think a lot of that, there's just too much noise there that if you're making this head coaching hire, to me, I think there's probably a few more candidates that are more qualified, who certainly have a track record there. And it's certainly, look, they'll be all about their splash, but I think you're making the splash for the wrong reason at that point. So I think that there's definitely a decision to be made. Certainly getting his name even as a finalist is going to help him, his candidacy in the future. But, Mark Jackson's not stepping away to be an assistant coach anywhere. And so it's got to be a real, people have said, after being the Warriors head coach, he's never shown an interest to get on anyone's bench. It's like, well, why would you leave what you have? That's nonsense. So, I like what he can do. I just don't think it would be the right move for Sacramento given where they're at right now, and especially within their history. You don't need a cringeworthy hire. You need to make the right hire.
Yeah, and although it could be splashy,
right,
it may not be splashy in the great way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like,
if you're the
splashy, there's water. It could be like acid being splashed.
Oh, wow.
How about this? If you're the Pacers, it makes more sense, right? Like, if you're not only does he have a tie to your organization, you've had a taste of the playoffs, you'd like to get back there, you're kind of rebuilding a little bit. To me, that one would make more sense because I think the water would be a lot warmer than being in California.
Yeah, being in California.
Capital, right?
I feel like too, a lot of people are being like, a lot of these guys with Mike Brown or Steve Clifford, it's the safe pick. Where Mark Jackson, people aren't seen as the safe pick, but at the same time, I don't know. I just think that direction of going with a coach who has been out of the game for so long, you have to be so sure on what they can do and what they accomplish when you're the Kings organization. If you're another organization, you can take that risk with a first year guy that hasn't been around on coaching staffs for a while. So I do think Mark Jackson deserves another chance in the NBA. Absolutely. But I just don't see why that has to be with the Sacramento Kings when they have been losing and out of the playoffs for 16 years.
And the pushback on this, and I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm sure this is how they look at it. When Mark Jackson took over the Warriors,
right,
they were not in a great spot, right? You had Steph Curry dealing with injuries. There's a lot going on. And based on what these players have said is he helped establish an identity and a culture, at least within the locker room.
Yep.
Now, did it become divisive at times, especially with the front office and other things? Yes, but he's also pushed back on some of the stuff that's been out there. I went back, listened to some interviews, and he said it was not true that he barred Jerry West from practice. Now, others say he did. He has addressed some of this stuff. He says it's inaccurate, but there's a lot of smoke here. However, I think from a Kings perspective, they're like, hey, what's our identity?
Mm-hmm.
It's chaos. On the floor, what's our identity? We don't really have one. We have like Fox, we have Sabonis. What's our identity? They could view it that they are establishing something with Mark Jackson because he has done it before with a different team. I don't know. I could be wrong on that.
Oh, and I agree with a lot of those things. But it also, another cynic could sit there and say, man, you coached over a decade ago.
Yeah.
Like you changed a lot of ways, but golly, look around the league. Like, this is a player-driven league, and if you lose the respect, I made this, all the smoke that you talked about, Deuce, even if you take away half of it, there's still some stuff in there that's, oh my gosh, that's pretty concerning, right?
Sure.
Even if half of it isn't true, let's pretend half of it is true, and I'm not going to say which is and which isn't. We don't need to do that. But when you're a coach, and let me throw out some of the names that were around, like the Will Hardys of the world. I think Kings fans really fell in love with that one for some reason. And then
They didn't know him 2 weeks ago, but man,
Yeah.
Will
They're like,
Hardy
who
is the guy.
Right. All of a sudden, they're like, that's the guy I want. Why? You couldn't identify him in a room if not for a YouTube video.
I shouldn't say Kings fans. It's some
Yeah.
people. I mean, even James Ham was.
No, I know. I poke fun. But you get these guys where it's going to be a first-time head coach. If you're a head coach and you're going from the whole Eric Spoelstra, Taylor Jenkins, Nick Nurse, these guys who have kind of paid their dues and have done every role imaginable within a basketball organization, right? And I think that's what's appealing about Will Hardy, aside from the fact that he comes from the Popovich tree. Certainly, I get it.
Yeah.
So if you're pulling from that, okay, that means you're a coach with no playing experience or without professional playing experience, and you're coming over into a league where automatically it's a con. If you have your pros and cons, it's a con because you have to gain your respect of your players, and immediately when you're not a former player, it's a tough hurdle to get over. That being said, when you're a former player, a legend in my opinion, like Mark Jackson is, and you already have that cachet, and then somehow, be it for whatever reason, you've lost the respect of players within the locker room, that's hard to get back. It's almost harder for a player, in my opinion, with the who has done the blood, sweat, and tears of a player. It's almost harder for him to gain the respect of the locker room back after losing it than it is for somebody who never played the game to get that respect. Because again, if you lose that respect, well, they didn't have respect for you anyway, right? Like they didn't respect you on that level. So it's harder for them to make that hurdle. If you lose that respect as a player already having that cachet, that's concerning to me. So again, these are types of the things where, again, I don't think it's too much to overcome, but the smoke and the concern and I think there's a huge gap in employment. Like if you're filling any job, gap in employment is why do you have this guy? Granted, he's got a great gig. He does, but it does remove him a little bit from today's players.
I think the other thing that has to be brought up, and that's a great point, Sean, is you mentioned the gap in employment too, as a head coach or even a coach. What has he done during this gap to improve as a coach?
Yeah.
Like one thing that was he got a lot of criticism of, and especially in that final year with Golden State, is the offense, man, kind of sluggish, right? Especially for the pieces they had. Their offense was kind of a letdown. He leaves, their offense absolutely takes off. Now, some of that is just players maturing too and becoming better and better. But like it wasn't that free-flowing offense that we saw the next year under Steve Kerr. It was completely different. I think the other thing is, has he spent time with other teams? Like we look at the other candidate, Mike Brown. Mike Brown's been in it. He may have not been a head coach since 2014, but he coached the Warriors in the 2017 playoffs. He was spending time with the Spurs when he wasn't coaching. Then he gets this gig. Like he's been in the thick of things. He's had to evolve. He's been around different personalities, different coaches. Well, Mark Jackson has that 3-year run. What else has he done? Now, he's got the experience as a player. He's got the experience as a broadcaster, but what has he done during this time to improve?
And I feel like not only that, it's people do get bothered by the fact like, oh, you say you want something, but do you just want it handed to you? Like you just said, Deuce, what are you doing to better that part of you as a coach, or to show that you want to be a coach rather than just saying, I want to be a rock star, and you grab a guitar and then you never practice. It's like, I want to be a coach. Well, what are you doing to practice and get better at it? I just don't. And that's where I feel like people can criticize this whole Mark Jackson situation anywhere in the league. But all the other stuff, you got to believe that a human can change.
For sure. The other part that really bothered me, and it bothered me at the time, like Michael Malone comes to Sacramento, and the thing he's credited with most was like, oh, this was the real guy behind the scenes. And I was like, man, that's just a terrible look. Like, what is Mark Jackson doing that really so many people within the Warriors organization is even saying this? I didn't like it because look, you could say Michael Malone was a hell of a coach coming over, and he's well respected, and he's going to be a great head coach, and that bears fruit. That turns out to be the right thing. However, to sit there and say that he's the mastermind of everything, he's actually the one coaching the Warriors, he's the one that Mark Jackson relies on the most, and you basically have this figurehead in Mark Jackson, and everything else is Michael Malone. doing everything else. It's like, I didn't think that was fair to Mark, but why do you have that noise? And again, it is your first time as an NBA head coach. It was his first gig, not only for Malone, but for Mark Jackson. So, yeah, it's just too much of that smoke, as Deuce said, and that it clouds everything else around it. And it's like, look, I would be very confident in Mark Jackson trying to turn things around for the most part, but I just feel like they could do and should do so much better.
I want to ask about one of the other coaching candidates now with Steve Clifford. Before we get to the best coaching candidate in these finalists, which is Mike Brown in my eyes.
We agree.
Yeah, yes, we do, Sean. Let's get to the unsexy pick, Steve Clifford.
Oh, he's Mr. Sexy.
No, and that's the thing. I like Steve Clifford. Deuce likes Steve. We are Steve Clifford fans, but when you're talking about these three finalists, why the hell aren't we talking about him as a serious candidate? I feel like he's the one that they're going to fall upon and be like, all right, I guess it's you, in my opinion.
I like Steve Clifford to a degree. My only thing is, I think what really hurts him, and it's my biggest concern, is the health scares that he's had. And part of that, I think, is how much he invests in his team and how much he gets in there. And he's obviously known for taking teams that are bad and helping them get into that first round of the playoffs. But I just, again, much like he and Mike Brown are very similar in a lot of ways. They're both a lot about structure. Mike Brown is an over the top OCD type coach where it is just strange. Like, he is a
amazing,
brilliant human being, great gentleman of a person, but also has, when it comes to detail and when it comes to, I remember when Michael Malone was the head coach of the Kings, and people used to tell me how OCD he was, to where you could literally move a pen in the office and just move it off and he'd be like, why'd you move that? Like, he would know, he would have that. Mike Brown is that on steroids. So I fully expect, like, and I haven't been around him a ton as a head coach, but I've always wanted to watch him because of the things that I've known about and heard about, and like, does he close the door 3 times like I've seen in Matchstick Men with Nicolas Cage, where he's playing this OCD type? Stupid. Like, I want to see if that's the type of thing that happens. But just kidding there, obviously. But it's still seeing him around Golden State, seeing what he has been able to do in so many different facets of NBA coaching. Like, I don't even think you have characteristics of, this is Mike Brown as a coach when it comes to a system, because I think he's adaptable. I think he can take his team, look around it.
The best coaches are adaptable. Greg Popovich has shifted the way he's coached and the style in which he's played for years. Steve
100%.
Can I just say, too, I asked you about Steve Clifford, and you already started
Let's
talking about Mike Brown,
Thank you.
that is my damn point, Sean. That's what we're all doing.
We are, but I mean, again, to me, I just have to cross him off the list, because if he's going to come in, as your, and this is just me talking, and this is the decision that I would make if I was doing things.
Yeah.
The health stuff is a real concern. Like, why would I put a guy who's had this history of, and he'd probably kick my ass right now, and probably could, saying he's fine, but I think he'd probably be better suited as somebody on a bench where it's not like that pressure goes away. But him and Mike Brown famously worked together before, so this could be a Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox situation where he comes in and maybe the two of them are combining their efforts to form Voltron or something. I do think that, I look, if it was Steve Clifford and that's your hire, okay, that I get it, and I don't take away from the again, it's not that he's unsexy about as a position, but it would be a hard sell to me when you're doing this process search, and this is the guy you landed on, who I think is a brilliant coach, but I just don't think he'd be the right fit for this type of team. I could be completely wrong, and I would imagine there's probably people within the Kings front office cringing at that, but they're clearly, in these candidates, leaning on experience, and Steve Clifford definitely brings that. I think whatever it takes, I would take Mike Brown more, but would I take him? Like, if I was to rank them, yeah, I would put Steve Clifford higher than Mark Jackson, in my opinion. I would definitely go that route, but there's other routes that if it's Steve Clifford, why not reach out for somebody else, right? Why not find that other person may sit this, again, like you mentioned, other jobs become available. I think the Quinn Snyder thing is much akin to Ben Simmons. I think a lot of people might want to, if I'm a team, I might want to see what happens with him first because of the possibilities it could open. And frankly, if you've got interest in these three as your finalists, are they really going to be gone? Like, this isn't like
right.
somebody you have to wrap up anytime soon. Mike Brown is preparing for a deep playoff run right now. Mark Jackson's got the broadcasting gig that's going to take him through June, so he's not going anywhere. And yeah, maybe you lose Steve Clifford to a bench, or maybe he gets hired somewhere else. I don't know. I just don't. To me,
you're right.
that's just
Others could be. I mean, James
Right.
Borrego. The list came out for the Kings. The initial 7-person list came out the day Borrego got let go by Charlotte. That's an interesting name. Like, he helped turn the Hornets around, right? They increased their win total. That's someone you would probably talk about. Again, another guy from the Popovich tree.
right.
I mean, who knows what happens?
And he could be that successor,
Yeah.
And what happens? That's it. I think everyone looks at Quinn Snyder, and I think there's some people that go, "Oh, he's going to go to the Lakers," or they sit there and say, "Oh," they buy into him being upset with the way that they treated Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel's another name that's out there, and I think Frank Vogel's a hell of a coach.
Yeah.
If you were to ask
what
me
if Doc Rivers comes available,
100%, and I would definitely want to talk to him. I think there's also ways of, there's only like 3 agents that represent like the entire league's coaches and executives. So I do feel like there's a way of saying, hey, Doc Rivers and Quinn Snyder aren't available at the moment, but if they were, hey, Sacramento, you have no shot. So I think sometimes those types of discussions can be had. I don't know if that's true or not, that Sacramento would have no shot, but I do feel, and again, they may not have interest in them either. And I think that's worth pointing out. Kenny Atkinson famously wasn't a part of the 7, as I think a lot of people were expecting. Even myself, I thought that he'd probably get an interview. Also a guy who's down here at Golden State, but there are reasons for that. So just because a guy has a great name and something that, it just may not be a good fit. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the week ahead looks like, but I just like to point out that there are, not that they're not doing their due diligence, but to me, what's the rush? So
if you were, this is strictly a prediction, what order do you think the Kings have it right now?
Oh God.
Yes.
My prediction is they have it Brown, Jackson, Clifford. My prediction. Not based on anything.
So I don't know. I honestly don't know. So I mean, if I'm just trying to go from what my gut tells me,
Yeah.
I would say I would be very shocked if Steve Clifford was truly a finalist. I think for what I mean by that is I think when it comes to Steve Clifford, I think it's really Mike Brown and Mark Jackson. And I think Steve Clifford might get like a or associate head coach with Mike Brown, possibly even with a Mark Jackson because Mark Jackson's going to need a lot of help. So yes. I think it's really, here's the people we're talking to. This is a way to get Clifford possibly some more money, a little bit more clout within the whatever gig he lands. Because I would be really shocked if they went with Steve Clifford. I really would. So I really think it's a 2-man race. But that being said, that's just a gut feeling on my end. I don't know that for sure. So I would probably agree with the fact that it would be Mike Brown and Mark Jackson, just because I can't imagine if they're doing this the way that most people would hope they were, where you're listening to your basketball people. I would imagine Mike Brown would be the favorite horse in that race.
I'm really curious, and maybe this will come out at some point, but why none of those assistants, like someone like Darvin Ham, didn't advance to the next stage?
Yeah.
And I know there's so many factors, and we kind of talked about it the other day when they first came out. It could have been like the two sides talked, and Darvin was like, "Yeah, I don't really want this gig."
100%.
He could have pulled out. He may be looking at the Lakers gig. He may be, I don't want to go to Sacramento, or Sacramento didn't like him. I don't know. Darvin has interviewed for other gigs too, going back to last season, and obviously did not get those. He's still with the Bucks. But did that surprise you that none of the assistants made the finalist list?
Not really. Only because of all those, they're coming from such great teams, and I think if you were to identify some of the finalists or some of the up and coming soon to be head coaches in the league, they'd be probably atop of the list. So there's only 30 gigs, and if you're highly sought after, or you're somebody who's everyone's thinking has head coaching aspirations and abilities, I just don't know why you would settle on Sacramento necessarily when there could be some better situations out there. Or even if you're somebody like Charles Lee, for example, Darvin Ham will probably be a head coach next year. So if Darvin Ham has an opportunity to go to the Lakers, well, I mean, sorry, Kings fans, like, it's still LA, it's still the Lakers. He has the opportunity to coach LeBron. There's still people that think that they should have been an NBA Finals caliber team, and you still have Anthony Davis there. So that's better than Sacramento at the moment. And so if that's the case, and now Charles Lee, who's thought of in the same realm of being one of those up and coming assistants that could be an NBA head coach, well, you're still with Mike Budenholzer, and you move up a spot, and you're still on an NBA championship caliber team, and you're still very, very, very young. Same thing with Will Hardy. You're with the Celtics, and you've joined Ime Udoka over there, and you're doing some good things. All of a sudden, they turned around their season. I don't think Will Hardy has to jump at the first gig that becomes available. Not to say that the Kings are, but I think that could be some more attractive options down the road. You want it to be the right fit, especially when it's your first head coaching gig.
Yeah.
There are other coaches who have been through this stuff before.
Yeah.
And Darvin Ham has. I mean, Darvin Ham has been a guy who has interviewed a lot, and now it seems like he's on the precipice of becoming an NBA head coach, and I think it'll happen. But I think there's just more attractive gigs out there. There are stuff like Kenny Atkinson, who when he got his first head coaching gig, that seemed to be a moment where he had to kind of jump at the opportunity that became available, because he had been through it so many times, and either for whatever reason it just didn't work out. Byron Scott famously did that as well. So I think when you're somebody like these younger guys, especially on elite caliber coaching benches, in my opinion, you have the luxury of being able to take your time with it. And I think interviewing is always something that's good, because it'll all get your name out there. It'll build some bridges for you. And sometimes you can be blown away. And I think that it's very possible that the organization wanted to kick the tires on some stuff, but I think honestly, it looks like they're definitely leaning into head coaching experience. And I think that's a smart play with the team that you're trying to assemble around a 25, soon to be 26-year-old all-star in Domantas Sabonis. I think they want to be able to build a style that's going to be cohesive with this group, with him and Fox. Not to say that a young up and coming head coach can't do that, but I think you're going to lean into the head coaching experience a little bit more.
Last one for you guys. Do you think the NBA should step in and tell the Sacramento Kings that they're not allowed to hire anyone who has coached with the Warriors? Because that's all they do.
All right.
Rick Adelman, Gary St. Jean, Rick Adelman, Eric Musselman, Keith Smart.
You know what's funny?
Luke Walton,
Sean,
Alvin Gentry, Michael Malone. That's like 7, 8 guys.
The fact that you can name all those guys and like nothing has really worked out, it doesn't fall on all those guys, right? Like it literally falls a lot on the organization, just firing them, not having patience. Or some falls on some of those guys, whatever. But at the same time, I still feel like it's the right start to keep going with places that, like, obviously there's a winning culture or something good going on for them. So no, the NBA, no, to answer your question, no, the NBA should not step in. Sean?
Yeah, it's just weird. It's
funny,
just,
right?
It's so weird. And you could certainly make that accusation among Vivek, but it's, as you pointed out, Deuce, there's so many examples of it before that, before he even got there, just within Kings history. And maybe it's because you happen to see that team so often because they're right down the road and they're just easy to see. And maybe you just end up you get your full sample size as opposed to a smaller sample size of what's just on TV. I don't know. It is just, I think it's just one of those things, man. You can't explain it one way or the other. The Warriors tree is certainly large when it comes to Sacramento. It's part of the roots here. So some of those have worked out mighty well though. So I don't know how to, if they did it doesn't mean the person sucks.
No,
no,
for sure.
It's a quality organization.
It is.
Sean, we appreciate you stopping in for a bit, man.
Yeah. Have
congrats.
a great first day.
Yeah, dude. Congrats.
Oh, yeah, it'll finally. Can I just say it's finally going to be amazing to have my work email back because
Aw.
I think I've missed a lot of stuff lately. So I didn't quite situate that as best as I probably should have. So that's my first line of defense or first moment thing I'm going to tackle. And then I also have to, I don't know if anyone can see this. I have to get, that's my Rihanna.
Yeah.
Very obscene kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Love
but
it.
this phone is so old. I was able to take it with me from 10 and now I have to upgrade the hell out of it.
Yeah, is that an iPhone 2 or 3? I can't. God.
SE.
That's why
a
your
brick.
pictures suck.
That's a
Okay, got
brick,
it.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Sean, we'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
That's
Bye,
the one and
Sean.
only Sean Cunningham. Interesting conversation with Sean.
Yeah.
The chat's on fire. I appreciate everyone here.
Give me a hell yeah.
If you're here, make sure to hit the thumbs up button because it helps our channel grow. It spreads all over the YouTube,
The universe.
YouTube universe. So
There you
make
go.
sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're on Twitch, hit the follow button. You also could subscribe to our channel, get some cool emotes. And if you have an Amazon Prime account, you get one free Twitch sub that you could use on us.
Hell yeah.
A couple of shout outs to some super chatters today. Well, we got one.
Ooh.
Mazur says, donate $5 as Mark Jackson wouldn't even take an assistant coaching job. Dude's ego is as big as Moby Dick.
That's
there we
big.
go. There we go.
Big ego.
There's Mazur's take. Appreciate his donation.
Oh, man.
Let's go to some of the chat, and
Yeah.
then we'll get into some NBA topics. This is a long podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you cool?
I have nothing else to do with my life.
Okay.
Of course I'm cool.
JG, appreciate JG being here. He says Hardy, Lee, and Ham would have got the educated side of the fan base excited. It's a shame. JG, my only pushback on that, I don't know what that means. The educated side of the fan base. Here's the reality: you don't make any moves as an organization to win headlines.
Yep.
You do it to win games. So
You're in those rooms.
You
You're
can't-
having those interviews. You're having those conversations. And I know those names, those new fresh faces are exciting and sound so great. But were they so great a year ago? Were we talking about? No, we were talking about them 2 weeks ago. And then we all started falling in love. That's what we do. Even with Mike Brown. Like in this last month, I have fallen more and more in love with Mike Brown, which I need to stop doing. Because that's what we all do when we are set on a coach and set against a coach as well.
what do you think of what Sean had to say? He's, talking about the 3 finalists and suggesting, well, maybe there's another name that could come into mind, and referencing Dave Yeager a few years back. The Kings had talked to so many people. Dave Yeager wasn't on the list. He becomes available, and the Kings swooped in.
This is why we talk to so many people that cover Sacramento, the Kings, the NBA, and everything. And Sean, even with that perspective, whether it's right or wrong, it is an interesting one, because why can't that be the case for the Sacramento Kings? And it's not because I'm not completely satisfied with the finalists that have been reported or anything. It's more that there really are some other coaches out there, and I want to make sure that this next coach for the Sacramento Kings isn't here for a year or two. Oh, yes.
This is going to be a break in the audio portion of the podcast real fast because I have to pee so bad.
pee.
It's not
No
even
one
funny.
cares.
So just
pee.
talk. All right?
Yeah, are you doing like a pee dance?
Dude,
oh my
it's
God.
hurting.
Go away.
My wee-wee's hurting.
Oh my God. That is so inappropriate. Where's our HR department? God. So tinkle and wee-wee. Like, we don't say that when you're past 20. I think that's creepy and absolutely disgusting. Yeah, stop laughing. Stop. Thank you, JP. TMI. Let's see. Sorry, I want to read some of your comments. Yeah, people just have been mentioning all the bad things about Mark Jackson, and that's something that we have touched on over and over and over again. And, Deuce and I did a lot of research on some old interviews that Mark Jackson has done right when he was fired from the Warriors and all these other times. And it was interesting because he was saying that he didn't say certain things or certain things didn't actually happen. But then other people are saying that they did. So there's two sides to every story. So it's like, that's what I feel like you have to be more open to. I would just be so pissed if someone was saying something about me and everyone was going along with that, and I actually never did something or said something. So that's my only thing when it comes to journalism. There's two sides to every story. I love it. Leezy says, Mo sold me on Mike Brown. Not here to sell anyone or anything. If anyone knows me, you know how much I love organizing. I have OCD. I literally just repainted a podcast wall that had some marks and dents on it yesterday. So yeah, I'm all about that life. And I love when people have that certain type of mindset too, but then can also be open to go with the flow at times, right? You have to understand to make those adjustments and be willing and be open. And Mike Brown has learned that over his years of coaching now.
I do want to read this. Chris says, if the tables were turned, Deuce would be throwing a fit at you, Mo.
Thank you.
Disagree with that.
Thank
I had to
you.
go. I've been hurting and I want to continue talking. So
I love that. Blake says, when you have a 3-year-old, pee-pee and poo-poo are some of the most common vocabulary, or in this case, just Deuce.
okay, guys, you guys are unbelievable.
Not unbelievable.
Let's get an update on our poll question. You've had the weekend to think about it. Who do you want? Mike Brown, Steve Clifford, Mark Jackson. 61% of people say Mike Brown. 25% say Mark Jackson. Ooh, he is for real. And then Steve Clifford at 14%.
Speaking of Steve Clifford, I also thought that was interesting when I asked Sean about like, hey, he's not the sexiest pick. What do you think about Steve Clifford? And then he all of a sudden started talking about Mike Brown, because the Steve Clifford pick, even in his mind, what Sean, in his opinion, was saying is that he feels like that could be someone as a lead assistant on a coaching staff, not necessarily the direction that the Kings are trying to go with, which I thought that perspective was interesting as well.
Just get it right. Just get it right. For once, get it right. I mean, even we will not know if they get it right when they announce it.
Nope.
Someone was sharing Rick Adelman headlines from when he got hired, and I saw Jill Adge put it out there too. It was interesting reading some of the coverage, because the Kings were talking to Scott Skiles and Paul Silas was a big time name. It looked like he was going to get the job potentially. And then last minute, Jeff Petrie and Rick Adelman connected, and they end up going with Rick Adelman. And Adelman's tenure, of course, we all think of Rick Adelman as his Hall of Fame coach,
right,
but he had this great run with the Blazers, 2 NBA Finals appearances, a lot of great moments. He ends up going to the Warriors for 2 seasons, and that was a train wreck. And he took over a really tough roster in a situation. However, after getting fired by the Warriors, he was out of the league. He was close to taking a job at Portland State. The Kings hired Rick Adelman at 52 years old.
52.
And
not a fresh face at that time. I mean, back then,
it's a
obviously,
retread.
Yeah.
Coming off a bad experience with the Warriors, maybe taking a college job. And you could
just don't know.
poke a lot of holes in it, right? Like, oh, well, he had talent with the Blazers and he won, but when he went to Golden State, he couldn't handle that situation. But he talks about what he learned from that situation. And obviously, he came to Sacramento, which did not have a lot of winning at all, and turned it into the only successful run that this organization ever had, 8 seasons. My whole point to that isn't to suggest that the Kings are hiring the next Rick Adelman. Yeah, that would be really nice. You know what? At the time, it wasn't some sexy hire. It wasn't some splashy hire. It was like, yeah, he's had some good run. He had some good moments. It was kind of one of those neutral things. It was like, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's what I just hope people are open to it. Like, don't get too high, don't get too low. Don't get super excited if Mike Brown ends up being the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Don't get too down if Mark Jackson ends up being the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Like, just be open to it all. You never know what could happen. And then once shit hits the fan, be pissed. Do what you need to do. Light those fires. I was picturing people with like fires on a stick.
For sure.
Yeah.
We need to talk some NBA playoffs. We have not talked about any of the games,
I'm ready.
Morgan.
I'm ready. I've been waiting since. I almost wanted to do a podcast yesterday because
I know
there were some
probably
exciting
should have,
games.
but I'm struggling right now, as you can hear.
Yes.
What was the best moment from yesterday, chat? I'm curious. I'm assuming you guys aren't casuals. You watch games like us because, yes, we talk a lot of Kings, but we also watch a lot of NBA. What was the best play of the weekend?
Ooh, the best play? You got yours.
It's 2 options.
Oh, what?
And maybe I'm missing one.
What?
GP2's dunk on Desmond Bane.
Shit.
Disgusting.
Disgusting.
Or Giannis with Grant Williams on him. That brick wall Grant Williams going at Giannis, taking a beating. Giannis gets him on a pump, gets around him, throws it off the glass and jams it home.
The Giannis one.
Ooh.
Because he didn't even have this huge efficient day, even though I think he ended up with a triple-double.
Dude.
And it wasn't even his best triple-double. But then on that move, it was just like, you can't stop this mofo. Like, there's no
Giannis,
stopping him.
It's not fair because some of these Celtics players, the Celtics, have been on this amazing run.
Yep.
If
Especially
you just
defensively.
watched that game yesterday, you'd be like, what? This team kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But Giannis, it's just, he's so big and relentless and aggressive and strong. Guys just bounce off of him. You're right. It was kind of an ugly game. There was a lot of physicality.
Turnovers.
It was fun. I'll give the Bucks credit. They allow a lot of threes for sure, and that's been the theme of what their defense has done this year. But if you look at the threes that they allow, it's not necessarily from like the elite 3-point shooters on the team. In fact, most of the threes yesterday the wide open threes that they allowed were Derek White, Grant Williams, who has been pretty good from 3, of course, and Horford.
And Smart as well, who has been, on and off, streaky from 3, whatever, but then also missed a lot yesterday. And you got to give credit to the Bucks defense. Even if they were allowing some of those threes, there was still some disruption or mind effery going on.
I think the thing that gets lost with the Bucks, one, is it's weird. This team won the championship last year, but they're seemingly flying under the radar, taking on the Celtics. It seems like they're the underdog in this series, which is bizarre. Yeah. But the Bucks had some issues defensively this year during the season. The big difference now is Brook Lopez is back. And I know that seems crazy, Brook Lopez, but what he does with rim protection and the fact that Budenholzer with Middleton out goes, all right, let's start Bobby Portis, Lopez, Giannis, let's be long. That is a big deal. And I think Lopez not only being back, but healthy. The guy had back surgery. I thought he was done. I was like, oh, his career's probably over because you got back surgery. He already kind of moved fun. Brook Lopez moves kind of weird, right?
He sure. I mean, he's okay.
Very robotic.
Okay.
But he is so big for what they do, and then what Giannis does defensively. This Bucks team's legit.
Right, and I feel like the year that the Lakers ended up winning the championship in the bubble, the thing that I kept talking about them was, I mean, not only defensively what they had with Anthony Davis out there, healthier at times, whatever, and LeBron 2 years younger and before lots of injuries, but it was really how long they were, how much space they took up on that end of the floor and their arms in the passing lane and so active, like Alex Caruso when he was on that squad as well. So it was a lot more of that going on. And I see that even with this Bucks defense when it's like not perfect, but they still have that advantage over teams. And this is without Chris Middleton on the floor, not only as one of your primary scorers, but still also a really good defender as well.
Yeah, and I imagine the Celtics will bounce back and they'll look a little better.
Yes.
But that was a huge message that the Bucks sent yesterday. Like, hey, we're still here. Yeah, Boston, you've had a good run since January, but we're still a good team, and we know what it takes. We've been here. We've faced all these obstacles before. We've been down in series. We've had injuries. I think one concern with Boston I have is just like you mentioned, Marcus Smart. Mm-hmm. I felt like the guy. I mean, his shoulders popping out.
I thought I heard a contusion.
He's got issues. Yeah. Like he's limping around. Jaylen Brown looks kind of gimpy.
Yeah.
Robert Williams
got kicked in the D.
Got absolutely like I was
kicked
concerned
in the D.
Yes, which of course announcers always get weird. Oh, did he get kicked in the? It
lower
looks like the lower half. No, he got hit in the dick.
Deuce would have been like, he got hit in the pee-pee.
Okay.
Like, you weirdo. Freaking weirdo, I said. That's what I said.
Okay.
Oh, shut up. You always do your thing.
But the one concern I had about Boston, even that series, was like, all right, are they going to get enough from the others? And they did in that series. Like, Grant Williams was big. Pritchard was big.
Yep.
Game 1, that wasn't the case. And it doesn't help. I mean, when you shoot 30-something% like the Celtics did, good luck. You're not winning that game.
Jaylen Brown alone had 7 turnovers, right? A lot of messiness going on. But you saw Jason Tatum allowing a lot of things to get in his head. He wasn't there mentally, I felt like. It just wasn't all there. So hopefully that's something that they change for next game. They're not as rattled, because the defense that we saw them play in that other series, I want to see that again. I know it's hard, especially when you're going up against someone like Giannis, who is a freak and probably one of the greatest scorers in the paint of all time. Just how do you stop him at times? I don't know. You can get physical with him.
He embraces it.
He just does. He loves it. He says, bring it on. I'll stretch my arm a little bit further, chuck it off the backboard and throw it down again. It's pretty incredible what he's doing, but you got to make those adjustments. And I feel like the Celtics will, and it will be a better game too.
A couple of crazy stats from this game.
Yeah.
Boston shot 53s in the game.
Wow.
50. They were 18 of 50 from downtown. How about this one? For the entire game, the Celtics made just 10 two-point baskets, which marked only the second time in NBA history a team made 10 or fewer two-point shots in a playoff game.
Ooh.
The Houston Rockets made 9 two-pointers in a 114-75 loss to the Spurs in 2017.
Yeah.
So I think the Bucks defense was like, hey, you played into our hands. This is what we want. We're going to play the odds. The odds are, even if Grant Williams can hit it, we'd rather Grant Williams beat us. But we're going to defend Jaylen Brown and make it tough. We'll throw Giannis at him. We're going to make life tough for Jason Tatum. We're going to play physical. And if the others want to beat us, sure. But those two, Brown, Tatum, they're not beating us.
And let's be real too. The Celtics were playing a Nets team who aren't the most fantastic team defensively. At times, they showed what they could accomplish on that end of the floor, especially with just the effort that they would put forth, but it just wasn't enough. And now you're trying to score and go up against a team that defensively, especially in the middle, that second line of defense, it's there. It's ready at all times.
The other game yesterday, Warriors-Grizzlies. Warriors get that 1-point win over the Grizzlies in Memphis. More
fun.
Please give me a 7-game series. Please. Just make it fun. That game had a little bit of everything. The intensity, probably too many whistles. What impressed me most with Golden State yesterday was that they had all the foul issues. Steph, Clay, GP2. Draymond gets ejected. But let's talk about it.
Are we going there first?
Let's talk about Draymond.
Let's go to Draymond first.
So Draymond Green fouls Clark, hits him in the face, and then pulls down the jersey. He gets tossed from the game.
Yes. Flagrant 2, they call.
We call that a flagrant 2? It's a flagrant 1.
It should have been a flagrant 1. I just feel like they gave a flagrant 1 for the face and then a flagrant 1 for the pull down.
That's such a weird.
And I know I'm kind of joking about it, but at the same time, it's like what Draymond has done with not only his reputation in the league, but also you don't, the refs are saying, look, you don't just get away with like pulling a guy down and being like, I got him from falling. Like you don't get to do that all the time.
Well, what's also super interesting about the whole sequence is Draymond Green, after the game, decided to do a podcast on this.
Yes.
And talk about how times are changing. We go live after games. Players, screw talking to the media. I'll just go live on my own platform and monetize my own content.
Genius.
And tell you how I truly feel without some lame questions from the media. That's what Draymond Green did yesterday. Here's what he had to say on his podcast about that sequence.
I am dumb enough to think that it would not even be a flagrant 1. That the playoffs are a little tougher and not as soft as the regular season, and that you can bump a little more and you get away with a little more, like I think tonight was probably a reputation thing more so than a hard foul. By definition, if we go through the definition of a flagrant 2 foul, I'm not sure that play would quite be the definition of a flagrant foul. I'm not sure it would meet that criteria.
I disagree with him saying it's not even a flagrant 1. I mean, you made contact with the face hard. Did you make a play on the ball? You yank him down. I just thought in that situation, like, come on. Like, you're tossing the guy from the game. And you could tell the official took some time on it. I don't think they wanted to because they understood that what it would take away from, they ultimately decided to toss him.
Sometimes it's about setting the tone too with the players. Like, you're not going to get away with that shit with us. Like, don't just stop trying to do that stuff. And we know how Draymond can be a certain way. So that is where it could be a little bit more of the reputation thing. At the end of the day, at least it didn't end up being like they lost because Draymond was out. They made their adjustments. They did what they had to do. They ended up starting Jordan Poole in that second half.
Morgan.
Then Looney did a fantastic job as the second line of defense for their squad, really just putting that pressure on in the paint as much as he could with Draymond out of the game.
Jordan Poole.
What a fantastic story, a fantastic player. I love talking about this guy.
31 points. He had 9 assists, 8 rebounds, some of the passes. Him just going end to end, pushing it, getting downhill, attacking. I mean, he had that one play late, just a bullet pass inside to Wiggins. That was sweet. He hit some big-time threes. That's the difference. The reason why the Golden State Warriors are a threat to win the championship is because of this guy. Yes, you need Steph and Clay and everything, but without Poole, I don't know that we're having this conversation.
Gary Payton started the damn game. He started it.
But
Steve Kerr had him start the game.
And Payton was still good for them. Like the
He
four
was
guards
perfect.
yesterday were good. But Jordan Poole's emergence is not just a scoring threat, but just the energy and the aggressiveness in which he plays.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe.
Dude.
He gets it. He plays with joy. He plays with so much understanding of what it takes as a teammate. That's buying in when you're not starting. And that's also buying in and understanding the adjustment of what your team needs from you when one guy is ejected. And he steps up to the plate, and he has shown that not only in the playoffs, but in the regular season as well. When so many different guys were out and injured, he was always there.
I think the biggest surprise for me in game 1 of this series was the fact that Golden State did such a good job with second chance opportunities. We already know what Memphis does. Like, they're one of the best in the league at getting offensive rebounds, creating second chance. Brandon Clark, I love that guy.
Yep. MVP.
He's been awesome in the playoffs. Like, where would Memphis be without him? Especially when you think about them and their offensive rebound, second chance opportunities. A lot of that came during the regular season when Steven Adams,
right.
He wasn't playing after game 1 of that Minnesota series, and he's out right now because he got COVID, but he's not even in the mix right now.
No.
This is going to be decided by length and like versatility, guard play, all of this stuff. But yeah, I was just really impressed with the Warriors' ability to create second chance opportunities. And they had more second chance points yesterday than Memphis. It was only by 2, I believe, but that was significant that they were able to even match at that point. Like, that's a big deal. Second chance points were 26-24 Warriors.
Okay.
And the Warriors outscored them in the paint 56-44. I think the one thing, I know Ja had a hell of a game, and he had moments where you're like, oh my God. The Warriors are going to live with how he played yesterday in terms of him relying on shooting threes. I know he's improved, but if Ja Morant is taking 10 threes, he was 1 off his season high yesterday, I think the Warriors are going to live with that. I think the Warriors look at yesterday going, we lost Draymond.
Yep.
Clay was pretty inefficient.
He was.
Steph was in foul trouble. And on the other side, Morant had a big game, and Jaren Jackson had one of the games of his life where he knocked down 6 of 8 from 3 or whatever it was. We won the game.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? Or am I simplifying it too much, or is there more to it?
Now, what are we doing? What's this conversation like if that last layup was made, that final play by John Morant? Brandon Clark got the ball in bounds. John Morant sprints from half court, just to get a nice look on the left side. Klay Thompson there to kind of just give him the pressure that he needed. Is this a different conversation in so many ways of what the Warriors did not accomplish, or Draymond getting ejected and how that did affect them? And that would be so much more of our angle today.
Yeah, and I think, also from the other side, Dylan Brooks, I thought, had a really poor game for him, especially shooting.
Oh, yeah. 5 fouls, too. I mean,
he's chasing around Curry, which is not easy, and he had a couple of air balls. Some of the shot selection wasn't great. Bane had an off game, and you expect Bane's going to bounce back. He's been so important to what they do. So I guess you can look at that point. It's like, well, yeah, but Jackson may not do that, but does Bane and Brooks play better for them that kind of equal things out?
They were lucky enough to have Melton come off the bench.
Oh, he was big for
I think
them.
he ended up adding 12 points off the bench, but it wasn't just the points that he was adding. It was like, hey, no one else can score right now from the outside or whatever was going on, that he was able to obviously execute that for the Memphis Grizzlies. And that was nice. And for Ja Morant, guess what? Adjustments are going to be made defensively again by the Warriors because they are a good team.
Right.
They understand things defensively. And you know how crafty he is, how he takes flight and just stays up there and knows how to go one way and then the other with the reverse or finish on the left side after going down the right lane. It's incredible how he knows how to score on the offensive end. It's so crafty. It's hard to stop, but the Warriors are good enough to stop it. So who's going to step up when that happens?
I thought Wiggins was kind of an unsung hero yesterday. 17 points. He had 8 rebounds too.
And defensively.
That was big, but I mean, you look at Poole had 8 rebounds. Porter had 8 rebounds. Wiggins with 8. GP2 with 6. And these guys are playing in the, lower 20s. I'm talking about with Porter and Peyton. So I thought that was big as well.
And look at Peyton and Wiggins. I'm sorry. I was looking at their rebounding numbers instead of their assist numbers. But even their rebounding numbers, just flying in there, the understanding what they needed to do in their role. That's what's so great about the Warriors, Deuce, is that everyone understands their role and they're down to buy into it. So even when your guy, Steph Curry, isn't on the floor, no one was trying to play hero ball.
Let's talk about the end of the game.
Oh, which part?
It's 117-116.
Okay.
Ja probably gets what he thinks he wants, and that's Steph Curry matched up against him, and he decides, I'm taking Steph.
Mm-hmm.
Steph does a great job being strong, taking the blow to the chest, stripping Morant. That leads to Klay Thompson going to the free throw line. What do you think about that?
Well, what I loved about it was Taylor Jenkins in the squad with that out of bounds play. You have Ja Morant just running downhill, right? Really?
No, I'm not. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying utilizing his speed
No,
and
I know.
explosiveness.
You're
now
fast
I'm
forwarding.
going,
The final
isn't that
play
the-
was Ja Morant. You're talking in the backcourt
Which
and
play-
attacking. I'm
I
talking
thought that
about.
was the final. Oh, no, you're right. Oh, my God. That was the play before. Oh, my God. Okay. So then that play when Steph Curry was playing defense on
Yes.
Ja Morant, and then someone else also came over, I believe, too. There was hands everywhere. And I remember being like, I think that's a foul. They show the replay up close, different camera angle, and it's like, oh my God, Steph Curry just did a fantastic job defending him on that left side all the way to the basket, shadowing the basketball and stripping him right at the top. I don't know how Steph Curry did that. Like, honestly, I just think it was like him using his defensive IQ to the fullest because it wasn't like pure athleticism, right? You have someone in Ja who is so much more explosive, and Steph Curry could have picked up his 6th foul at that moment, but instead, just well done. Perfect job from Steph Curry defensively on that play.
How shocked were you when Klay missed those 2 free throws?
Oh, I was stunned because as soon as Klay went to the free throw line, I was like, all right, game over. Like, this is where we're going with it. When he missed the first one, I'm like, oh, okay, you got a little bit, something else here. Misses the second. He was so pissed off at himself, too. He talked about it after the game.
And then that final play with Ja in the backcourt. That was a fantastic play. It's a play that the Kings ran earlier this year with De'Aaron Fox.
Utilize that speed.
And he had a great look. It was just great defense. It was really good defense by Golden State.
That was Klay, I believe, that was ended up being on him by the basket down low for those final seconds. And they pushed him out, made him uncomfortable. And it was one of those things where I just wish that Ja could have spun back around, did something, but there was only 3.6 seconds left, which there should have been 4-point-something seconds left when you look back at the replay of when Brandon Clark got the jump ball. And and even going to that, the missed free throw, it ended up going off of Dylan Brooks. None of the officials knew who it went off of, and they just called a jump ball. And it was like the Grizzlies lucked out by getting that second chance.
Tonight we get a couple of game ones.
Oh, hell yeah.
Sixers Heat without Joel Embiid.
Can we talk about that?
No. I mean, yes.
We're an
No
NBA
shit.
podcast. We can talk about anything. I'm so excited. I'm like hyped up
I'm
right
not
now.
excited for this.
No.
series.
I'm not. I'm just excited to be talking about basketball. Because we've been talking about coaches. We've been talking about all this other shit. I'm just super excited to break down a little bit more about this too, because you got Joel Embiid with everything going on with his face, not even sure if he's going to be able to play until game 3. And you go, this Sixers squad with James Harden hasn't been great. Harden hasn't been playing his MVP caliber level.
Now it's going to be on him.
So now it's literally going to be on him. And I was looking up some stats. Oh man, I don't know where I ended up. Oh, I did end up putting them on the sheet. There we are. Okay. Harden is making only 33.3% of floaters this year, down from 46.7% over the past 4 years. He is making just 48.1% of his driving layups compared to 55.7% over the past 4 seasons. My point of bringing up those two stats right there is just how dominant he's been when he drives in. You have to put all your attention on him. You have to make sure that you are coming over and help. Everyone has their eyes on James Harden. Right now, you don't have to feel that same way. He's still going to be that big scoring threat, but I don't see him all of a sudden emerging and just coming out of nowhere and being that MVP James Harden in this series.
I mean, he's not, especially going against Miami's defense.
Right. And look what Miami did to Trae Young. You guys, they focused on him and said, we shutting you down. And that's exactly what they did.
The difference there is like Harden, the one thing, even though he's definitely, in my opinion, lost a step. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Is it age? Is he battling the injury? I don't know. He is strong. The guy is strong.
Yeah.
He can deal with some physicality. So we'll see. We'll see if he can get to the free throw line. But it's just he hasn't had that same type of game really this whole season.
One more stat I have for you because I thought this was interesting too. Obviously, Harden and Embiid in that pick and roll, that was something that was actually dominating for them, right? Where was it? It was Harden and Embiid generated 1.15 points per pick and roll.
Yep.
Think about how many pick and rolls they had coming down. That was their offense. So what's going to be the two-man game? What's going to be the pick
Harden
and roll?
and Paul Reed.
Thibault, Tobias Harris. Like, what are you trying to do with this? It's just a whole different game plan without Joel Embiid out there. And that's what makes me not as excited for this series because I want to see it full health, Joel Embiid in there. I mean, full health, whatever health, like, is he going to put a mask on next? What has to happen next for Joel Embiid? That's why I'm not as excited. But then the last thing I did want to get to this because the controversy of Doc Rivers leaving Joel Embiid in the clinching game 6, I don't think shit happens, you guys. Like, there's just going to be times when that happens.
Probably shouldn't have had him in. It does. I'm with you. It does happen,
Come
but
on.
you're up by like 20 some points. You can go ahead and sit him. I mean, you were in full control. He shouldn't have been in the game. And that you just meant, Morgan, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
It could happen
I'm
in the first quarter.
open to this conversation.
That injury could have happened in the first quarter of the game. Yes.
Right.
But as a coach, you minimize your risk.
Absolutely.
And you go, okay,
fair.
we don't need to put him in there because weird shit can happen. And guess what? It happened.
Weird shit happened,
It
yeah.
happened. And you're trying to win a championship. You can't afford to lose Embiid.
Yeah.
And they lost him.
Yeah. I just have a hard time of everyone piling on Doc Rivers. It's like, come on, guys. It's physical, it's basketball, but yes, you minimize the risk. Absolutely.
Last game of tonight, game 1, Dallas-Phoenix.
Let's go. Oh, I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Devin Booker.
He's back.
He's back, but like, what are we going to get from him? I think no matter what, just having Devin Booker out there on the floor is enough, is what you want if you're the Suns, because I don't know. I don't feel like the Mavs have what it takes to get past the Suns, but hey, I didn't feel like that about the Pelicans
I think
either.
they can make it interesting. The question is who's defending Luka, right? Luka is
Bridges,
a
probably.
force. Okay.
But even
Bridges,
then,
crowd. The problem is, it is Luka, so he's tough to guard no matter what. But there's some issues. Look at how Alvarado got into Chris Paul, okay?
Whew.
And Alvarado, pesky, annoying, plays with such great pride. Jalen Brunson is playing at a extremely high level.
he is.
Doing what he did in that last series with Luka, without Luka, he's been a force.
Yep.
He can also get into guys. That's a matchup I'm intrigued with.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, when you look at Dallas is how are they going to handle DeAndre Ayton? I think DeAndre Ayton brings more offensively, obviously, than Gobert as a threat. Like, he can get you 20 in a game and get you 20 and 10. Like, Ayton's a big dude. And the Dallas doesn't have, they're counting on like a Dwight Powell, right, to deal with him.
Yeah, and then who's going to get in foul trouble, and then what do you have after that? So no, with someone like DeAndre Ayton, with the footwork that he has, that he's capable of utilizing on the offensive end, it's going to be a tougher matchup for them. But at the same time, we've seen this Mavs defense step it up this season. So what kind of perimeter pressure are they going to put on to not allow certain things to even penetrate into the paint.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see after game 1 and not make too many crazy predictions after that or too many crazy statements after that. I always go into, I let game 1 be like welcome party. Let's see what, even for the Celtics, I'm like, that's not what we're going to see the entire time. Game 2 always tells a little bit more of the story.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be fun to follow. We're going to be back live again, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to take a deeper dive, talk to someone who knows the Warriors quite well and has some insight on Mike Brown and Mark Jackson. We'll do that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This will end the audio portion. We'll jump to the YouTube Twitch exclusive. That's coming up. We love you guys, but we gots to go.
You'll never gonna answer nays. Yeah.
Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know. Deuce and Mo.
What's up, party people? All right, we're here.
That ends the audio portion. We'll hang out for a few more minutes. Of course, we always tell you go check out D'Lo and Casey on ESPN 1320.
Hell yeah. We'll
They're
be
on
on.
noon to 4.
We'll be on with them on Thursday.
Okay, sweet. I can't wait to be on with them.
Give me a hell
so
yeah.
we'll hang out for a few more minutes to get some questions. Steven says, with Dumars gone, is Gentry Vivek's new spot? I don't know what if Gentry really has a consultant role or not. I don't know how that really works out. But yes, Joe Dumars, we found out this morning, took a job in the league, a huge job with the league.
Yeah, and good for him. I mean, it sounds like a lot of people like Joe Dumars around the NBA, so it's nice to see that he's just moving on up.
RP says, would you guys feel different about Mark Jackson if the chances of attracting clutch sports clients is higher? LeBron, AD, Levine, just to name a few. Even if Mark Jackson is popular with those guys, I don't think they go, hey, Sacramento, we are going there. But it doesn't hurt to have a guy that players like.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think when I think of clutch sports, I think about clutch putting their players in the best position for a business decision rather than a basketball decision sometimes, which ultimately can be the right thing to do because it's not like organizations care about you as a player, right? They're really down to tell you, oh, hey, you're our future, and then trade your ass away. So you got to do what's best for business.
Patrick wants to know, when do you guys think the new coach will be hired? I mean, if it's truly down to just these 3 candidates, which that's what we can assume, I'd imagine that it's possible that they get something. It's not inconceivable to suggest that late this week we find out or early next week.
Which is so crazy and weird to think about. Sometimes in my mind, I'm like, oh, I wish it would take longer. But hey, it's better than 4 days later of firing a coach, right? Is that what happened? Or was it 4 days later? Or
It happened pretty fast with Walton, if that's what you're saying. Yeah. Mark says, wondering, is Doug Christie going to be able to stick around? Do you think the Kings will move him to Stockton and assist there? I don't know. I don't know what the deal would be with Doug. I think a lot would depend on who they hire. If there's a pre-existing relationship, maybe a coach would be open-minded. But, in my opinion, we've seen in the past, most assistants who get hired by a team, they are chosen by the incoming head coach. Sometimes you do see some holdovers around the league, and the Kings have done that with Bobby Jackson in the past. I don't know how that would be for Doug Christie. So it's an interesting one.
it is an interesting one.
Up, down, our poll question. You had the weekend to think about who do you want. Mike Brown, 64%. Mark Jackson, 24%. 12% for Clifford.
Look at that.
Steven says Mark Jackson is such a Kings hire. I don't know what that means.
It's funny when people have these strong opinions on the 3 finalists, like they know what they're going to be. And I only say this, Steven, because I feel like this is so many others on Twitter and everything, and people being like, Kings being Kings. And it's like, do you know though yet? I mean, like, that would be any hire.
Let's
any
be
hire.
honest. No matter who they hire.
Yes.
No matter who they hire. No matter what they do, they're not going to get universally praised.
Not
It
until
doesn't
they
matter.
start winning,
You
you
have to
guys.
win. That's all there is to it. Even if see, and that's the thing. If they hire Darvin Ham or Will Hardy, I think the fans would be like, yeah, they got the head coach. We don't really know. I mean,
You don't.
I was on the Darvin Ham train for a minute,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't know. I mean,
Even I'm on the Mike Brown train. I still don't know. He could be awful once he's here. Like, you just don't effing know yet. So, it's tough. Just be open to all of it.
What does your gut tell you who we will hire? I think it's going to be Mike Brown. But you can tell I'm not very confident with that.
With their voice. Looks going like this.
Tyler says, is there any chance that these reports are wrong and they hire a different candidate? Or is it just me hoping? Well, I'm sure it is you hoping a little bit. Is there a chance that someone else comes out of left field? Oh my God, whose music's that? It's James Borrego. It's Doc Rivers. It's so-and-so. I guess there's a chance at that. And that has happened before when the Kings hired Dave Yeager. Scotty says it doesn't matter who the coach is if your max player can't shoot, can't lead, can't interview, shouldn't be a war. The word can't needs to change. Okay.
Oh.
Well, Scotty, so the Kings should not hire a head coach.
Yeah.
So,
I like that, Scotty. Yes.
Buddha
no
says,
head coach.
Sorry. It should be a Kings hire instead of a fan hire. Well, one, it should never be a fan hire, right? And it's no disrespect to all of us, but like,
We're not in the rooms in the interviews and doing all the work, with that. We're digging up old interviews and digging up old articles, and that's as much work that we're doing to try and make what our decision on what we want, in our opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, I think we made it clear. I think we've talked. We're starting to talk about the Kings coaching search now, like we did with Ben Simmons a little bit, where it's like we've talked about it so much. I think we're both on the, hey, you know what? Mike Brown would be a great guy for the gig, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think there was someone I saw say, do you think this is is Mark Jackson a smoke screen to make the fans feel better about the other candidates? I'm like, no, man. I think they really are interested in Mark Jackson. This is not like some fake thing.
This isn't like some trick or anything. So, just be open to it all. And it's like, because what else are you gonna do? Like we can and even all the people that were so excited for Luke Walton, and
I don't know how many people were really excited.
Okay, but then no, there was some people excited, and then there's people
really.
once yes, there were 100% there were.
I would say the majority of fans were not happy about that.
Okay, but I mean, whatever. But then like, as soon as all the losing started happening, it's like, fire him. And then as soon as a few good winning streaks would happen, it was like, oh man, he's the guy. And it's like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You got to understand, like, there's so many things that factor in, and that you just got to be open to it all.
Steven says media probably won't react negatively if Clifford or Brown is hired. No, I don't think they would celebrate it either. I actually don't think the media would necessarily react
anything
negatively if Jackson was hired. I think some fans in Sacramento would absolutely hate it, and I think that's for sure the case.
Yeah.
I think I've seen enough of that on Reddit and on Twitter that there's a lot of fans who would be unhappy about that.
Yeah.
So that's when Morgan starts saying a lot and not expanding. That's when she's
no,
like, all right,
I was
going to
read something and then you just went
ahead.
off. I was just going to go to my point of a comment that I saw that you went out of. DeBaby said, God, I hate to admit it, but I was a fan of Luke at first.
Okay, so one person more.
One person, I'll take that.
Cool.
Thank you, just to prove my point.
All right. That will do it for us. We'll be back again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Morning. Thanks so much for hanging out. We love you guys so much, but we really have to go.
Have a great rest of your Monday. See ya.